Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Well-Fed Business Podcast with myself, Connor Benham, and the cunt, evil bull genius, who is behaving in his usual cunty ways. But this week, we're joined by a very special guest. We're joined by a mobility coach called Mr. Toby Swallow. John's been working with Toby for how long now?
About 6 months, isn't it?
Yeah, about that.
For about 6 months. John is finally not completely immobile and has normal functioning limbs, which is funny because he is small. And Toby's going to tell us all about the importance of being flexible, being healthy, and how that actually relates to you and your business. Because if you're anything like me, you're probably at your desk all fucking day. And if you're not at your desk, you're probably in a warehouse moving shit around, doing your back no good. So I've probably just butchered exactly what you do, Toby. Do you want to tell us what you do in a little bit more detail with some more technical excellence?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Connor. Thanks, John, for having me on the show here. I really appreciate that. So I work with middle-aged guys, 40, 50-year-old guys, where this is the age bracket where guys start to notice a few aches, pains, stiffness, and it's very common, but it's not normal, to blame our age. And it's simply because we haven't looked after our bodies. Guys haven't done the work in order to keep them moving. Now, you mentioned about flexibility. When we talk about flexibility, often this is associated with muscular flexibility, i.e., can you touch your toes? Something very different from joint movement. So when we do some sort of physical activity, a sport, a form of exercise, typically falls into skill-based. Think about a martial art or a racket sport. We've then got the aerobic stuff, running, rowing, cycling. Then we've got the strength training stuff, like going to the gym, lifting weights. But all of these things, a lot of guys struggle with their joints, and this requires their own specific work as well. It's also about the connective tissue, things like ligaments and tendons. So throughout our lives, if we are not giving our nervous system those signals that we still need a certain range within our joints, over time that nervous system was going to say, hey, I no longer need that range, so I'm not going to give it to you. And training a tendon is very different from training a muscle. It's a different type of input, different level of training altogether. And it's the itises that we suffer in our middle ages. So it's the tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, it's the tendinosis, that type of stuff that all becomes far too common. And yet again, guys say, it's my age. And therefore we look for soft passive options, that joint support, taking a pill or rubbing in some sort of magic cream. Yeah, okay, that's very much short-term approach, but doesn't help you long-term. And hey, I'm here to support that because I'm 48, I'm middle-aged, and I know how your aching body feels. Well, not you, Connor, you're a whippersnapper, you're still a baby. So you get the 25, 30-year-old Duracell Bunny PT training these middle-aged guys when they're not dealing with the same life pressures, the lack of sleep, the kids, the mortgage, the business problems. All of these have an impact as well. And you don't have millions of hours in a day or a week to do the stuff that you maybe once did in your 20s. So very much a different approach.
John.
What?
You're an old man. You're a business owner. You're someone with not a lot of time. How have you found working with Toby?
The time thing isn't really true. I mean, I made a decision a long time ago to focus or work my my business days around my exercise, not the other way around. Because if you put exercise, if it's not a priority, it gets relegated. So you get too busy. Jim Rohn says we tell ourselves that one day doesn't matter, but every day matters. Because one day becomes two, becomes a week, becomes 3 weeks, becomes maybe a month over Christmas. And before you know it, you're out of the habit. So I actually prioritize. It's not about time. I've got no time for people who say they don't have the time to exercise, in the same way as we don't have the time for people who say they don't have time to fix their businesses. It's bullshit. They just have different priorities. You know, anyone who sits and watches, say you watch one soap opera, I don't know, EastEnders. How many nights a week is that on? 3 now? 4?
No idea.
Yeah. Well, that's three half-hour slots a week. You could be doing something else: exercise, reading a book on marketing, improving your mind. Get up half an hour earlier at night in the morning. Go to bed a half an hour later at night. Spend less time on doom scrolling. So the time thing is bullshit. But to answer your question, how have I found it? And this is, I said this on my testimonial for Toby, and I'm sure people think I'm just making it up. Within 3 days, or rather on the third morning, which meant I'd done one of the 3 tri-weekly training exercises and 3 sets of what he calls CARs, the morning routine. And I was noting an objective change. I could walk my dogs without feeling pain in my hips. It was just unreal. Now, fast forward 6 months, I've probably been 90% diligent. I've missed some time for various reasons. I had a couple of colds and things. But 6 months on, and when we say it's hard work, it is hard work, but it's not hard work in the sense of building a house or digging a road. It's maybe 20 minutes hard work 3 times a week and 10 minutes hard work every morning, because it's concentrated work. 6 months later, I've still got a long way to go, but I can do things that I didn't even realise I couldn't do until I realised I could do them again. So a list of small things that make a small difference, but all add up. Things that most guys won't even know they can't do anymore. Such as getting in and out the car without any trouble at all, even in a narrow space in the car park. Toby and we're quite good friends as well, so we exchange WhatsApps, and I often send him a message from the car park of my local supermarket, kind of laughing at guys younger than me struggling to get out their cars because they're just so stiff. And many of them are obese as well, which again, I don't have time for. It's my metabolism. No, it's not. There's a simple exercise you could do to lose weight. Please, no thank you, I don't want any more food. Dead easy.
It's a thyroid condition. Come on, John.
Yeah, right. I think it's an appetite condition, I think. Getting in and out the car, tying my shoelaces, putting my socks on, getting dressed in the mornings, shaving my head. I mean, I can do this with ease now, whereas before it was a real kind of, yeah. On the squat bar, I've used a safety squat bar with handles that come down here. Well, now I can actually do this properly and pull the bar down. I probably haven't been able to do that for 10 years, something like that. I still hurt in the mornings sometimes. I think a lot of that's just down to the weight training. I don't hurt the same way. Ache, that is. Yeah, it's just lots of getting up and down off the floor to play with the dogs. The other day, my wife's vacuum cleaner needed unblocking. And let's get down on the floor to do that, and it was just no trouble at all, as opposed to go, let me get down on the floor, heave myself back up again. And it's the little things. And this is only in 6 months, and this is a long-term, lifelong thing. I mean, I'll probably be doing some version of this stuff, certainly the morning routine, the cars, probably every day for the rest of my life, which might only be a short period of time. We never know. But yeah, it could be decades,
I like how you referred to the vacuum as my wife's vacuum.
It is her. She bought it. She bought it. She owns it, so it is hers.
Fair enough. That's a good girl, isn't it?
You know me. I speak literally.
Extremely.
Don't read anything into it.
It's still funny. It's still funny to me.
Oh, I knew it as soon as I said it. It was funny.
And you was harrowed by the image. I think that Toby might have painted for you.
He did.
The idea that you'd be 70 years old, having to get off the toilet using a handrail. Now imagine that. You spent your whole life building a successful business. You finally can enjoy the fruits of your labour at 70. And your reward is getting off the toilet using a fucking handrail.
Well, the thing is, and again, Toby and I talk about this quite a lot because we're both, intelligent people. We don't, we're not morons. My dad was probably fairly fit and healthy most of his life, but he never did any exercise, dedicated exercise like we do. He didn't do any kind of regime. So when he stopped working for a living, he just didn't do very much. He used to drive a bus full of other old people around. But he fell and broke his hip. My mum died, she did the same thing. She broke a hip, but she just allowed her world to collapse in on her. But my dad, he fell and broke his hip, and at that point, because he'd never done any exercise, he suddenly felt a loss of control. The control is an important word here. So he became afraid to leave his house. Well, as Toby would often say, if you don't use it, you lose it. And he means your ability, he just said this morning, your ability to perform movements. Well, because Dad did nothing but get up and down out of his chair, maybe go into the kitchen and back again, and maybe go up the stairs at night, his body would, metaphorically shrink. So that's all it could do. I mean, your body's a very parsimonious thing. It will only do what you ask it to do. It won't volunteer anything because it's all about calories and keeping you alive, really. So he just slowly died, and then he just had a heart attack and went one night. But his entire world caved on him. And this is mental health stuff as well. If you can't get out the house, if you can't walk, if you can't cycle, say, then your world is constrained by 4 walls and a television and maybe the internet. That's not healthy. What do you reckon, Types?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I know we're on exactly the same page on all of this stuff. We need to take accountability for our own condition, whether we are thriving or in a state of demise. And I was reading an article the other day about Tesco's had been fined, I think it was back in 2020, over £700,000 for a gentleman who'd gone into one of their stores and he'd slipped and had multiple hip fractures. Now, looking at the detail, the guy was 91. Okay, so he's an old man. Now, would they have received the same fine if that was Connor? Because Connor, being a nice young chap, would have gone in. It was definitely a slip hazard, having a wet floor and maybe not everything in place to deal with that. But maybe, Connor, you would have just slipped and landed on your ass and had a bruised backside for a few days. But this 91-year-old chap, has he done the work necessary over the last few decades to minimise bone loss? Yes. Has he done the work to maintain his physical strength and his muscle mass through aging? Has he done the work to maintain his mobility and his foot speed? Probably not. So instead of blaming Tesco's to be 100% at fault here, why is it that we can't look at an individual and say, well, okay, yeah, hands up, this has happened to you, but what have you done to mitigate your risk from these things? And it's just unfortunate, isn't it? We accept a lot of these things through a natural process of aging, but we can do an awful lot to mitigate that, just like business. And it's the small things, it's the small habits that we do on a daily basis that we either choose to do or not do, just like business, that can determine how successful we are. I've seen that through your mentorship as well, guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's this. We are entering a period now of weak men, hard times. To a partial quote there from the hard times create good men create good times create weak men create bad times. Well, we're coming into a weak men, bad times period now, and it's de rigueur. It is the trend to blame everything else except yourself, and no matter what happens to you. So now, being obese is not your fault. It's a disease. You can't help it. You're fat. Your parents were fat. Your kids are fat. I'm a fat person. But at the same time, they might want to take an injection to reduce their appetite. So they're accepting the problem is actually how much food they eat, but they're not going to accept responsibility for eating that food. So they'd rather take an injection. Yeah. And we see it in business too. Business owners, it's LinkedIn algorithms fucking me over. It's my competitors, it's clients, it's everything else except me. Now, the thing is, looking at it from a Stoic point of view, everything else out there is completely beyond your control. Even down to the contents, the ingredients in the food you see on the supermarket shelves. What you do control is what you put in your mouth, how you move your body, how you run your business, what time you get up, what you watch on TV, what content you allow into your fucking brain, what you write. You control all of those things, but they're the things people just say, oh, it's not my fault. I want the government to help me. I want LinkedIn to change. I want everyone else to change. Some complete wazzock wants a legally enforceable minimum wage for freelancers because she's too fucking stupid and lazy and probably fat and ugly as well to learn how to sell herself, for instance. You know?
There's a link there, isn't there, between business and our own health and demise, and the fact that we choose to chase feelings now. I say we, this excludes the three of us. Yeah, this excludes the three of us, of course, but it's common now that we chase feelings, and whether on social media this is about likes and engagement, whether this is about the feelings of euphoria. I eat what I like, I eat it because I like it, as opposed to do I need it. There's more emphasis now on doing a form of exercise because you enjoy it. Well, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't mean to say it's going to give you the results. You know, training balls to the walls and getting that sense of euphoria at the end of a training session doesn't mean to say it was a good training session. And let's be honest, it's all about the results. If I post on social media, I'm looking for a specific result. I want an inquiry to come from that. I don't care if it's had 1 million views or 100,000 likes and lots of engagement. If it doesn't get an inquiry, it wasn't a successful post for me.
Absolutely. I mean, as we said on the call on Wednesday, I think it was, we have one metric. I have one metric in the business I pay most of my attention to. That is, how many calls do I get? That's a result for me, because I know 75% of them will convert into sales. Everything else is window dressing. An interesting point there about blame shifting. Have you noticed how people are turning more and more to government? So, for instance, they've made it, I don't know if it's the case in the UK, but over here we have a sugar tax in Ireland. In the States, it's illegal. I mean, the government has made a law to say it is against the law to sell a fizzy drink with so many grams of sugar in it over a certain size. I mean, when really the responsibility is on the individual not to buy that drink and drink it, surely. I mean, I'm missing something here.
It doesn't work. We know that from cigarettes. How much? I don't
alcohol.
smoke, but how much is a packet of 20 cigarettes now? If you're a smoker, you're still going to find the money to smoke, to buy those cigarettes. And it's all about personal choice, isn't it? Whether you choose to do something about it or you choose not to, it is a choice. So looking towards the government is just absconding all of your responsibility to somebody else. And then it's easy to blame them when your business or your health goes tits up. You haven't looked after me.
But it doesn't work.
You know, and people fall into this trap of saying, well, something's better than nothing. Well, you pay your national insurance contribution in the UK and that will lead to a state pension. There's no guarantee when you retire that's going to pay out, and will it pay out enough? So you pay into a workplace pension scheme, but you pay the bare minimum hoping it's going to pay out. But you haven't had a financial review to establish how much you need to pay every month for financial retirement, so you have a comfortable way of living. And then you say that the government isn't paying enough on the pensions, on the state pension. No different from anything else, is it? So we can put our trust in somebody else, and we know that fails time and time again. Let's be responsible, both in business and for ourselves.
I absolutely agree. The other thing, or another thing, is there's a book called The Power of Habit by a guy called Charles Duhigg. I don't know if you've ever read it or not. But in there, he talks about fitness and exercise being what he calls gateway habits, meaning the disciplines required to get up, say, at 6 a.m. and go out to a freezing cold barn like I do every morning, 6 mornings a week. Those disciplines bleed over. And I've actually observed this in my own life. About 12, 13 years ago, I was a chubby little thing. And I had a fat John moment when I realised that had to change. And it did. It changed overnight. I started taking my bike out and, I took control of my eating and my exercise because I'd got lazy and slightly fat. And funnily enough, not only did I start to lose weight and my body change shape, which is really strange, funny that, isn't it? But my business started to take off too, because the disciplines required to get up and go cycling, go to the gym, etc., and not drink alcohol and eat decent food instead, those disciplines transferred and translated into sitting at my desk working too. Or as I should say, standing at my desk sometimes as well and changing position.
What was absolutely what was a bit of an aha moment is attending your recent Core Control in-person event, your mastermind event in Cork last month. And Connor, you had given about mapping out your diary, blocking out specific time for certain things, right down to the nth minute. I do that with my food. I do that with my mobility work. I do that with my aerobic capacity work, with my gym training. I do that with my sleep and my downtime and my breath work. But why am I not doing that in my business? You know, so there's a lot of correlation between business. I love routine. I thrive on routine because shit gets done. Yeah, time and time again. No excuses. Yeah. But when you don't have that in place, then we make excuses that things don't happen or we're not getting the results that we see. So maybe I'm different from the exercise standpoint and the food standpoint because I've mastered that routine and that repetition of being so damn boring over time that it really does work, that I needed to replicate that on my day and weekly, monthly diary as well. I'm routine orientated. I know I will do certain things at certain times a day, but I didn't plan it to the nth degree for my business as I did the health side. And it works. Funnily enough, that, Connor. It's like, you know what you're talking about with that.
Almost. A disciplined man at the end of the day is a disciplined man. And for you to make that transition over is probably easy because you're used to things like calorie counting. You're used to scheduling in your workouts, how many reps you're going to do of each thing. It's all very well orchestrated and planned because you know the power of the work that you're doing. You know that you're going to get the results. So it's probably easy for you making that transition to start applying that into business, at the very least, a lot easier than an undisciplined person trying to do the exact same thing. But when you're starting out for the first time, especially for the fatties listening, because there are a few, you know, we've got a few fellas in construction that are still fat, despite being on the tools, because all they do is eat Greggs at lunchtime all day. And they really struggle to comprehend the idea of something as simple as calorie counting, despite how easy it is for us with the apps that are available today. I assume both of you have got an app that you use to measure it, or you've probably got to the point where you don't need to anymore because you've just got the running log because there's that much experience there.
I eat the same thing every day, so I know I have done for the last 5 or 6 years. So no, I don't have that.
Where I was going with that is, yeah, it's almost like we know what we're talking about, Toby, and it's almost like a disciplined plan produces results. It doesn't matter whether it's your mobility, your fitness, whatever. Well, and if the thought of not being able to wipe your ass when you're 70 years old isn't enough to spring you into action to start taking care of your mobility, you're probably a lost cause, aren't you?
Yeah, do you know what? I think in terms of our health, we go through life and it's this entitlement piece. We take our health for granted, and we've got the National Health Service, and that is fantastic for if something happens to you, they'll deal with it. But I don't believe they're necessarily best place to talk about the proactive piece, because it's very much about reaction. Look, I've got growth, let's investigate it. It's cancer, let's operate and deal with it. You know, they're amazing at that type of stuff. Okay, but there are minimum guidelines from the NHS in terms of the level of activity. Yeah, most people don't meet that, or they think they meet that, but they're telling themselves lies because they tend to choose one or the other in terms of we need this balance of aerobic activity, but also the strength work, not one or the other. You can't overcompensate on one to compensate for the other one. But we get to a point where we slowly erode our health over time. Yeah, and all of a sudden we find that something happens, an event happens. This could be a stroke or a heart attack. And for so many people, it's like, shit, you know, that's come out of the blue. What do you mean it's come out of the blue? It's been staring at you in the mirror for the last 20 years. You know, it's the accumulation of lack of sleep, poor stress management, shitty nutritional choices, lack of movement, working excessive hours, and all this stuff, that it's just the straw that breaks the camel's back. And yet for many guys, it's like, well, I thought I was okay as I am. But that's because you look round and compare yourself to every other man in your peerage, and you think, I'm okay, because most people these days are fat and they're weak and immobile. But we know men of today are less active and they're nowhere near as strong as our fathers were at the same age. There's evidence to support that. And I talk an awful lot about doing humanistic standards, a sit to stand test, which has scientific clinical evidence to support that in terms of all-cause mortality. Can you put your shirt on? Can you balance on one foot to put your shoes and socks on? Which also includes your pants. Because having worked previously in a care home sector, care home environment, people going into care later on in life because they can't dress themselves, they can't wash themselves or shower themselves, get on and off the toilet, or they don't have the strength and mobility to get in and out of a chair, they've fallen and they've broken a hip. That is heartbreaking because it is largely preventable. If you need care in a care home because you have a legitimate medical need, that's something very different. But going in because you're too infirm and weak to look after yourself, that's unforgivable. You've neglected yourself. That's self-induced.
Yeah,
You know.
I agree. I mean, I do people watching in the supermarkets. I tend to go on a Sunday morning now, and that just seems to be the time when a lot of, I say elderly, they're probably only 20 years older than I am, and they're taken by often their sons, it seems. It seems to be a thing over here. And these sons are probably only 10 years younger than I am. And I see, so these like little mini me's, you know, maybe 48, 45 and 75-year-old people walking around, and they're shambling. Even the younger ones are shambling, and they're stiff and immobile. And I'm fucking smug. I'm undeniably smug about it because I'm in great physical shape and I'm mobile. And it's not because of the Lucky Sperm Club or anything else. It's because of hard work and better choices.
I think for somebody like you, John, you and I, you know, being legitimately lean, yeah, muscular, strong, aerobically fit, it's a status symbol for a middle-aged man because you can't inherit it.
Definitely.
You can't buy it. Yeah. You can't borrow it. It has to be earned. And the only way to do that is graft over time. You can't, you know, it's not about a 6-week challenge or, you know, I'm going to start planking for 10 minutes every day. You know, if that gets you into something else, fantastic. I'm all for that. But this type of stuff requires dedication. It requires work. No different from being in a successful business. And really, I think our health, we will ensure our health in case we die from something that our families are going to be financially taken care of. Lots of guys will, and women as well, not to exclude them, will work savagely long hours at the exclusion of everything else because they don't want their business to fail. But what they're not doing is looking after themselves so they can look after their business. Because if something happens and they can no longer work, their business is going to go up the Swanee.
Yeah, my view is it's very simple. Is I can't. I mean, like my wife needs quite a bit of attention, and she's going to need more as time goes on. I can't do any of that unless I'm okay myself. And the only way to make sure I'm okay is to take care of myself, exercise, nutrition, etc., etc. Now, I think going back to something you said before, one of the problems we have, and it's in all areas of human endeavor, is human beings are really shit at being objective. We have, you know, confirmation bias. But worse than that, when it comes to things like business and say medical issues, the TRT doctor I spoke to the other day and my coach and my old psychotherapist all said the same thing for completely different disciplines. And that is one of the hardest things they encounter with patients and clients is getting them to tell the truth. Well, we have the same thing because there's various things at play here. People's egos come into it. A guy of 45 going to the GP who's overweight and in shit his physical condition, he will probably claim he works out. He will claim he drinks less than he does, eats less than he does, and exercises more than he does. Business owners will tell us they charge more than they do, they work harder than they do, they're more discriminating about taking on people than they really are. It's hard to get them to tell the truth. And So that's why measurement is so important. I mentioned a while ago now, the metric I have, how many calls, that is completely objective. It's a number. It's not a fraction. It's not what I think I had about. It's I know exactly how many calls I had this week. It's 1. It converted to a sale. Okay. If it had been 5, I'd have probably closed between 3 and 4 of them. This is predictable. And it's the same as exercise and mobility. If you do these exercises, you will statistically get a result. Some people will become more muscular and leaner and more mobile. But if you all do the exercises, you will all improve. And you control those absolutely in the same way as you control your actions in your business. But it all comes down to measurement. If you refuse, and this is why social media is so common, by the way, it's so beloved of people, because it's unmeasurable. Therefore, there's no responsibility or accountability. Well, I posted what I was supposed to post. It's not my fault. Yes, it is. Because you're not measuring what's working and what's not. You're doing what's easy and comfortable. You're following the weird little fruit to melt belly fat diet in business, effectively. It's not working. Maybe I need to eat more of that fruit. It's bullshit. But people don't want to face the truth because the truth is often uncomfortable. The truth is nearly always uncomfortable, I think.
And to build on that, 1 second, to build on that, the reason fad diets are so popular, the magic fruit diet is so popular, and increasingly so. I mean, John and I had a discussion about this the other day, how the demand for a magic silver pill, magic bullet, whether it's for your health, your business, whatever it is, there's never been a greater demand for that magic pill that people can take. It's because I believe because of social media, we live in a world that is so full of instant gratification. There is even more need for people to work out because it teaches you to delay that. Well, you have no choice but to embrace delayed gratification. When you do a workout, you can't immediately measure your bicep and be like, right, it's grown an inch from this one workout. There's no immediate gratification there. When you do mobility work, you don't do it once and then you're immediately increasing your range of motion. It's about discipline, turning up, doing the work every single day with the promise that you're going to get the results in the future. Have you two heard about the marshmallow test they did on children?
No.
Yes.
And how they measured it against their future success.
Yeah.
So the children were offered 2 choices: marshmallow now, or you can have 2 or 3 marshmallows in a couple of hours' time, roughly. It was an undefined time frame. It was just a few hours. They then measured those same children's, I think, academic results. And the children that delayed the gratification, waited a little bit longer to have more marshmallows, they graded far higher than the children who went, no, just give me the marshmallow now. And it's a very similar situation with working out. If you've got the discipline to be able to delay that gratification, well, then you're laughing.
Comes back to very similarly to what I said earlier, Connor, in terms of people are chasing feelings as opposed to results.
Yeah.
Whether that be in business or
that feeling you get when you sign up to a 6-pack workshop. They tell everyone, don't they? I've got family members that they're yo-yo dieting constantly, and they yo-yo work out. They go through phases of working out and phases of not working out. And the reason they do that is because they sign up to something like a 6-pack revolution is one I've heard of recently, and it's not great from what I've seen. And they tell everyone, and they get the gratification because they are now identifying as someone who works out because they're going to be doing it for the next 6 weeks or whatever it is. And they tell everyone, but very quickly they go very quiet about it. And that 6-pack never really appears, does it? Give it a few months and it's the next thing. Bigger biceps in 80 days.
Fucking hard.
Yeah, I think in the health and fitness space, I think and if we take a long-term approach to it, I liken it to brushing your teeth. Nobody gets motivated about brushing their teeth. You might buy a new, all singing, all dancing electric toothbrush for 100 teeth, and you might be looking forward to trying that out tonight, but the effect of that wears off pretty damn quickly. But we brush our teeth morning and night diligently, 2 minutes at a time, day after day, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, because we understand the benefits that's going to bring us in the decades to come. Not only is it good about so we don't have smelly breath, you've got the social aspect on that, but it's about maintaining our own teeth into our later lives as well. But it's about doing what you need to do as opposed to chasing that feeling of immediate gratification. You know, you don't run around telling anybody and everybody that will listen to you after you've brushed your teeth for 2 minutes going, woohoo, I just had an amazing toothbrushing session this morning. I feel amazing from it. No, you just do it because you understand the why behind the need to do that. And a lot of the stuff in whether it's food or any type of fitness training is about understanding your why, and it's about doing the work you need to do with a little bit of what you want to do as well. But it's the fundamental need behind it. It's the boring shit over time that brings and yields the biggest results.
Touching on feelings, we've created a world for ourselves where how people feel about things is more important than the truth. So I might say something. Just for instance, I did a review of somebody's business by video the day before yesterday, and he emailed me and said, "Yeah, it hurt, and it was, but it was always. I agree with everything you said, basically." But then he goes behind my back and starts saying to someone else about how I'm a bully and I've ruined his mental health. And that to him, I fully expect to see that then repeated by him on LinkedIn and social media. So he could get his echo chamber to say what a nasty man I am. In that case, my objective opinion of his website, of his business, of his approach to marketing and being a copywriter won't be relevant. He's got a shit business. He's not had a client in 2 years. He admits this. And I've told him why this is. All that will go out the window, and all the people will care about, including him, is how hurt he is, how upset he is. It's fucking pathetic. People care more about feelings than they do about facts, and it's even in law now, isn't it? You know, if somebody takes offence or is hurt by something you've said, you've committed a crime. Well, how absurd can we get with this? I'm a vegetarian. I'm offended and upset by you eating a fucking meat burger. You know, what's wrong with that? In terms of the law, that makes sense. In any rational person's mind, that's fucking absurd. But this is the world we've made for ourselves, unfortunately.
Yep, absolutely.
Didn't you get asked to put your top on by a bunch of fat people?
Yes, by a river on a hot summer's day. There I was, like everybody else. I'm just parading. Well, I'm not parading. I mean, I'm with my wife and my daughter. I'm when I'm out and about, I'm not a loud person. I'm quite quiet. But I'm there in my shorts, and I can see this couple, this family are looking over, and they're talking to themselves. And she's in her little sort of bra top, bikini top. She's got shorts on. He's in his swimming shorts, but he's got moobs and a belly. She's fat herself. She's got the rolls on the, the back fat, the belly, around the arms and the legs and stuff. And she comes over and she asks me if I can put a top on because I'm making everybody feel uncomfortable. Now, I am not parading around. I'm not strutting my stuff. Am I lean? I'm not a big chap. Am I lean? Am I muscular? Am I vascular? Have I got striations? Absolutely. But I will not apologise for the work and the discipline that I have done over a long period of time, and the fact that I choose to look after myself, and she and her husband or partner clearly don't. But it was just the sheer... I was gobsmacked. I was really taken back by the cheek, and I see this as positive discrimination.
Well, imagine if it was reversed. Yeah. If a lean person went to a fat woman and said, "Will you put some clothes on, please, because you're making me feel ill because you're so fat and ugly." Imagine, quite rightly, the furore. But it's okay to body shame people when they're not fat and ugly. Have you noticed that?
It's this positive discrimination because, and it's the crab bucket effect, isn't it? A few of us are these crabs that have escaped the bucket. But other people, to make themselves feel better for not doing the work, want to try and pull you back down to their level, to suck you back down into this shit state of average. And average is not a good place to be.
That's so common in the pub scene. And I know a lot of our listeners are pub goers because a lot of the boys are in the trades, and going to the pub after a hard day's work is part of the course. And I've seen this. I was brought up in many a different pub. The minute someone announces to a group of friends that they're trying to better themselves,
in any way at all.
Belittled. Yeah, in any way.
Yeah.
Whether it's business, whether it's health, whether it's their relationship, they immediately get belittled. And as you said, it's the crab effect. Like, nope, you're going to stay in this miserable bucket like the rest of us, because if you go ahead and do that, I have to confront the fact that I too could have made those choices, and I too could have furthered myself.
And then you get the comments of, go on, when you start saying no because you're trying to change yourself for the better. So you say no to that cake, that takeaway, that extra beer, and they're going, oh, go on, one won't hurt you. It's this attempt to pull you back down into it as well, because actually that extra one is going to hurt you. It is going to make a difference, you know. And it's harder. What's harder? We choose our hard, don't we? It's hard being overweight. Yeah. It's hard being weak, immobile, and fragile. Yeah, there's no question about that. That's hard work. It's painful. It's hard work having the discipline to do the work that you need to do day in, day out. But you choose your hard.
To be that way, yeah.
You choose your hard.
Absolutely.
But if you do the positive hard work, you live to reap the benefits from that, rather than getting sucked in and feeling sorry for yourself and wallowing in self-pity and pain. No different, again, to business. Do the work that you need to do to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no difference at all. And we shouldn't expect to see any difference either. Let's face it, keeping fit as an activity or as a conscious choice and business are all relatively new inventions. One, because business, we didn't need it. We evolved in an environment where we didn't have business as such. And similarly, because we evolved like that, we didn't need to do conscious exercise and food choices, because that's how we lived.
Yeah.
So they're both relatively new. Now, we need to wrap this up fairly soon. So anything else you want to talk about? Anything else we need to do, Connor?
Yeah. Very quickly, Toby. We've talked about cessation of pain, fat people, undisciplined people, not being able to wipe their asses when they're older. Can you give us a very quick, minimum effective dose for people to, at the very least, maintain their mobility as they age?
Do something every single day. Take your joints through a full and complete range of motion, pain-free range of motion, under control every single day. Give your nervous system give your nervous system the signals that it needs to maintain that on a daily basis. And movement ability is akin to rent. That's due every single day as we age.
So if people need help with this, Toby, from you, and I strongly suggest everybody does, because, you know, if you want to do something right, don't do it yourself, consult an expert, and Toby's definitely one of those. Where can they get hold of you?
LinkedIn as Toby Swallow, or through my website, tobyswallowcoaching.co.uk.
Yeah, and if you struggle with any of that, just ask me and I'll send you on to him. Cool.
And
anything else?
If you want to know what it's like working with Toby, again, just ask John, and John will give you an honest, brutal breakdown of all of the painful yet beneficial John has to do every day. So he's now a supple little kitten hopping out of bed, albeit without a boner because the TRT hasn't arrived yet. But EBG is certainly kitten-like thanks to Mr. Swallow.
Oh dear, cunt.
And that is everything. Thank you very much, Toby Obi.
Thank you very much, chaps.
More than welcome. And we're not going to pitch you anything because Elite's closed. But if you do want our help, drop us a message. We might help you. We might not.
And it certainly won't be for free.
It's great. I can't recommend you guys and Core Control enough. It's been an absolute game changer.
Thank you, Toby.
It's almost like we know what we're talking
about.
Yeah,
I know. It's funny.
Almost. Right, guys, stay safe. Wash your hands. Do your mobility exercises. And sayonara.
Have a good one. Cheers, fellas.